My alien roommate went into heat, and we got stuck together during lockdown sci-fi. HFY Alex had never expected his life to change because of a global lockdown. After all, he was just another 20-something trying to make it in the crowded streets of a future Earth. With so many people living in the same city, it was easy to assume that you were just another face in the crowd. But the day everything shut down, thanks to some new alien virus, was the day everything started to spiral out of control. The government had announced a complete lockdown, and people were advised to stay in their homes. All non-essential businesses were closed, and travel between cities was restricted. Naturally, most of Alex's friends had already hightailed it back to their parents' houses or found other places to ride out the storm. Unfortunately, Alex had no family to go back to, and even worse, his apartment lease had just expired. So there he was, standing in his usual coffee shop, scanning the listings on his phone for a place to stay. He had no choice but to look for someone willing to share their space with him during the lockdown. The problem was, most people had already found roommates or were locking themselves away in isolation. The more Alex searched, the more desperate he became. Just as he was about to give up and move to his car, an ad popped up. Roommate needed, alien, friendly, and patient. Alex stared at the screen. He couldn't tell if this was a joke, but he was desperate enough to click on it. The listing was posted by someone named Zira, a research scholar from the planet Voltar 9. Her profile picture showed a tall, elegant figure with glowing violet skin, and she had these eyes that looked almost too intelligent to belong to any human. He read the details. Zira is studying Earth's ecosystems for the next few months and has been temporarily relocated to Earth for her research. She's looking for a roommate to share a spacious apartment during the lockdown. Must be open-minded and able to tolerate some alien quirks. Open-minded. That sounded like exactly what Alex needed. After a brief chat, Zira agreed to let him move in. "Don't worry," she wrote. "I promise I'll keep things peaceful. Just be mindful that Earth's rules don't always apply to my species." With no other options and a growing sense of urgency, Alex agreed. It wasn't exactly ideal, but at least he wouldn't be alone during the lockdown. The day Alex arrived at Zira's apartment, he wasn't sure what to expect. He'd read about aliens on the news, but meeting one in person, that was a whole different ball game. The apartment was high up in one of the new, eco-friendly skyscrapers that had been built to house both humans and aliens alike. It was spacious and modern, with windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, giving a breathtaking view of the city below. The walls were covered in art that Alex didn't quite understand, abstract shapes, glowing patterns, and textures that shifted when he looked away. Zira greeted him at the door, and Alex almost forgot how to breathe. She was exactly as she appeared in her profile, tall, graceful, and with skin that shimmered like starlight. Her hair was long and smooth, almost silvery in the light. And those eyes, bright yellow like two tiny suns set against the violet of her skin, seemed to study him with curiosity. "Alex, I presume?" she asked, her voice calm and measured, yet with a strange musical quality to it. Yeah. "That's me," Alex stammered, suddenly feeling very out of his depth. Zira stepped aside and motioned for him to come in. "Welcome to my home. I hope you find it comfortable." She was, surprisingly, easy to talk to. They discussed the basics of the lockdown, the restrictions, and the new reality they both found themselves in. Zira explained that her species, the Voltarans, were here for research purposes, studying Earth's flora and fauna. They had been part of a peaceful, intergalactic mission to learn from Earth's ecosystems and share knowledge in exchange. Despite the oddity of the situation, Alex was starting to feel a bit more at ease. Zira seemed kind enough, and at the very least, he wasn't going to be stuck in some cramped apartment by himself. But as the evening went on, Alex began to notice something strange. Zira wasn't acting quite like he expected. Sure, she was polite and friendly, but there was something different about her. Every so often, she would look away sharply, her eyes flashing a bright orange before quickly returning to their normal yellow. Her hands shook slightly when she placed something down, and her movements seemed more jittery than he thought was normal for someone of her alien stature. At first, Alex thought it was just stress from the lockdown. After all, they were all adjusting to this new world. But Zira seemed to be more than just stressed. There was an almost anxious energy radiating from her. "You okay?" Alex asked, unable to ignore it any longer. Zira looked up at him, her eyes softening a little. "I'm fine, just adjusting to Earth's gravity." She forced a smile, but Alex wasn't convinced. Later that night, after dinner, Alex settled on the couch to relax. Zira didn't join him. She had retreated to her room, and he could hear the faint sound of something clicking and buzzing from behind the door. He assumed she was working on something important. But when the sound stopped and Zira came back into the living room, she looked different. Her usual calm and collected demeanor was replaced by something almost erratic. She fidgeted with her fingers, her bioluminescence flickering nervously. And that's when it hit Alex. Zira was acting strange, even for an alien. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but there was something about her energy that was making him feel uncomfortable. Maybe it was just the isolation, or maybe it was the unknowns of living with an alien. But there was something about this situation that didn't sit well with him. "Hey, is everything okay?" he asked, trying to sound casual, though his tone was laced with concern. Zira paused for a moment, her eyes flicking toward him, and then she sighed. "I apologize. I didn't want to explain it this soon, but I think you deserve to know." Alex's heart rate quickened. "Explain what?" Zira took a deep breath. "It's a personal matter. One that my species doesn't usually discuss with others, but in our current circumstances, I can't hide it anymore. I'm in heat." "Heat?" Alex repeated, not sure what she meant. She nodded, a small trace of embarrassment crossing her face. "It's a natural biological cycle for my species. It happens once a year, and it's a period of heightened hormonal activity. It's difficult to explain, but I'll need to manage it until the lockdown ends." Alex blinked in confusion. "Wait, so that's what's been going on? That's why you've been acting off?" "Yes. I was hoping I could handle it privately, but with the lockdown, it's been harder than I anticipated." Alex nodded, trying to process the new information. He wasn't sure what to make of it, but Zira seemed genuinely distressed. The last thing he wanted to do was make her feel uncomfortable. "Okay, so what does that mean for us?" Zira paused, her eyes uncertain. "It means, unfortunately, we'll need to adjust to this. It's a difficult time, and I'm not sure how we'll manage this together." "I didn't expect you to be in this situation, Alex, and I'm truly sorry." Alex sighed, rubbing his forehead. This is a lot to take in." But as the night wore on and the lockdown stretched into the unknown, Alex realized something. He didn't have a choice. They were stuck together in this situation, and somehow they'd have to figure it out. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to survive the strange new normal together. The next morning, the atmosphere in the apartment was thick with an awkward silence. Alex sat at the kitchen table, his coffee growing cold in front of him, his mind still spinning from last night's revelations. Zira, his alien roommate, was in heat. He had never expected to hear that phrase from anyone, let alone an alien from another planet. The information had thrown him off balance, but as the morning sun streamed through the windows, Alex realized something. He couldn't let this weird situation ruin everything. He glanced over at Zira, who was standing by the window, her arms crossed. Her violet skin shimmered in the light, and her glowing patterns were subdued, almost faint, but there was something in her eyes, something tense. She was clearly trying to maintain her usual calm, but Alex could tell that whatever she was going through wasn't easy. "Hey," Alex said, breaking the silence. "I know this is a lot to process, but I'm trying to understand. Can you tell me more about what you're going through? I want to help, I think. Zira turned slowly, her expression softening. I appreciate your willingness to understand, she said, her voice still carrying that calm, melodic tone. But it's not something I usually discuss with others. My species values control, and admitting vulnerability like this, it's difficult. Alex raised an eyebrow. Control. You mean this heat cycle? Does that mean you can't control it? Is it dangerous? Zira sighed, walking toward the kitchen counter. It's not dangerous in the way you might think. It's a natural process, but it makes us more impulsive. Our hormones go into overdrive and we need to manage it. On Voltar 9, we typically isolate ourselves during this time away from others. But here, with the lockdown, I'm stuck. Alex frowned, processing the information. So, you need to be isolated, but you're stuck with me. And this lockdown is making it worse. Zira nodded. Exactly. My species doesn't have the same coping mechanisms as humans, so the only way to handle this is through distraction. And it can be tricky. It's not just about physical urges, it's emotional too. I'm fighting the instincts to keep everything under control. Distraction. Like how? Alex asked, genuinely curious now, though a little concerned. Well, Zira said, her tone growing a little more serious, we have a set of techniques, mostly physical exercises and focused meditation, that help us manage the cycle. But they require solitude. My species is used to being alone during this period, but the isolation during the lockdown means that we are forced to confront this in new ways. Alex looked at her, his mind running wild with possibilities. So, you're saying that even with all your alien tech and knowledge, you're still struggling with this. It's just biology, Zira nodded again. Yes, it's biology, and sometimes, no matter how advanced we are, we can't escape our basic instincts. Alex wasn't sure what to say to that. The alien world Zira came from was clearly very different from his own, but hearing her speak about her biology in such a personal way made him feel something. Empathy, perhaps, but also confusion. He had never considered what it would be like to be so vulnerable, even in an advanced society. The idea of struggling against something biological that you couldn't control was both alien and oddly relatable. Okay, Alex said finally. So what can I do to help? I mean, I know we're stuck together, but I don't want to make things harder for you. I'm trying to understand. Zira seemed to appreciate the effort in Alex's voice, though her face remained tense. Your presence is a challenge, Alex, she admitted, her words careful. Not because of you as a person, but because of your species. Human presence in close quarters triggers some of the biological instincts, even if they aren't directed at you specifically. Alex's face reddened slightly. Wait, so I'm making it worse, just by being here. Zira hesitated, then nodded. It's complicated. Your presence is both comforting and a trigger. Humans don't realize it, but your scent and warmth activate certain instincts in other species, even if they don't intend to act on them. It's not personal. Alex was quiet for a long time, processing her words. He hadn't realized something as simple as his presence could affect her so much. I didn't know, he muttered, trying to wrap his mind around the idea. So, what should I do? Do you want me to leave the apartment? I can find somewhere else to stay. Zira quickly shook her head. No, that would be worse. Being alone right now would make things more difficult for me. She paused, looking at him with an intensity that made Alex feel even more awkward. I think if we're going to make it through this together, I need you to help me. We have to find a way to coexist during this time. It's the only way. Alex rubbed his temples. Okay, but what do we do exactly? I'm just trying to figure this all out. Zira took a deep breath, steadying herself before speaking. We can start by helping me with some of the exercises. Simple activities, really. But the key is to keep our minds distracted. I'll need help with keeping my thoughts in check. If you can keep me grounded, it'll help. But you must stay calm. If you become agitated, it will make things worse. Alex swallowed hard. staying calm. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to stay calm in the face of all this strange new information. But Zira seemed to be asking for his help, and he didn't want to back down now. "All right," Alex said, standing up and facing Zira. "I'll do my best. Just tell me what I need to do." For the next few hours, Zira showed Alex the techniques she used to try to calm her body and mind. It wasn't easy, and Alex could tell Zira was struggling with the physical side of things. Her glowing skin flickered, and her breath became shallow at times. But the exercises helped her center herself, focusing on deep breathing and slow, deliberate movements that reminded Alex of yoga. After each session, Zira seemed to calm down a little. Her bioluminescence wasn't as erratic, and her movements became less twitchy. But it was clear that her battle wasn't over. The heat cycle would last for several days, and Alex realized that they would have to keep adapting. During the day, they worked together, trying to keep Zira distracted with small tasks around the apartment. Zira, in turn, taught Alex about Voltairean art, explaining the meanings behind the abstract paintings and carvings that decorated the walls. They worked in silence at times, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. This was an unusual situation, but they would figure it out. Still, there were moments of tension. Sometimes, Zira's eyes would flicker with an intense, almost wild energy, and Alex would have to remind himself to stay focused. He didn't fully understand what was happening to Zira, but the idea of making it through this lockdown with his alien roommate was starting to seem like a strange, but not entirely impossible, challenge. By the end of the day, Alex felt exhausted, but he could see a slight shift in Zira's demeanor. She was still struggling, but the worst of the day seemed to have passed. He had done his part. He'd kept her grounded, distracted, and calm for now. Zira, looking at him with gratitude, gave him a small smile. "Thank you, Alex," she said, her voice quiet but sincere. "I know this isn't easy, but you've been more helpful than I could have imagined." Alex nodded. "No problem. We're in this together, right?" Zira's eyes softened, and for the first time in a long while she looked genuinely at ease. "Yes," she said, "together." As the night fell, the tension in the apartment seemed to ease just a little. They were far from being out of the woods, but Alex knew one thing for sure. He was no longer just a roommate. He was part of something bigger now, and whatever came next, they'd face it together. The days that followed weren't easy. Each morning, Zira and Alex would start with the same routine, a series of exercises to help calm her body, followed by hours of trying to distract her with small tasks. The tension between them was still there, but it was starting to feel less like an overwhelming force and more like something they could work with. The heat cycle was far from over, and Zira's struggle was still very real, but they were learning how to coexist in the strange and stressful circumstances. Alex had to admit, he was getting used to the oddities of living with an alien. Zira, for all her advanced knowledge in alien biology, was still someone who needed help. She was vulnerable in a way that Alex hadn't expected. Despite her confident demeanor and vast intellect, she was struggling, and it was up to him to be her support system. In return, she was teaching him things about her culture and her planet that fascinated him. As the days went on, Alex began to notice subtle changes. Zira's bioluminescent patterns were no longer flickering as wildly, and her movements had become less erratic. She seemed more focused, less on edge. The exercises, though strange to him, were clearly helping her, but there were also moments of silence between them that seemed to speak volumes. Both of them knew they were walking a fine line between friendship and something else. Alex could feel it in the air, something unspoken but there nonetheless. Zira had always been kind and patient, but there was an undeniable tension that neither of them could fully ignore. On the 6th day of the lockdown, Zira's state seemed to take a turn for the worse. That morning, her usual calm was replaced with restlessness. She paced around the apartment, her glowing patterns flashing bright bursts of color, her breathing shallow. Alex had learned by now that when Zira was in this state, she wasn't easy to calm down. But he had also learned how to read her signs, to understand when she needed space and when she needed help. So when she began to move quickly around the apartment, her gaze sharp and unfocused, Alex knew it was time for action. "Zira," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "Let's try something different today. I know you've been doing the exercises, but maybe we should switch it up. How about we take a walk? A change of scenery might help." Zira froze in place, her eyes narrowing as she looked at him. She seemed to be considering it. After a long pause, she gave a small nod, though Alex could tell she was still struggling. "I don't know if that's a good idea," Zira said, her voice tight. "I don't want to make it worse." Alex walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer comfort. "We won't know unless we try. You've been cooped up in here for days. A little fresh air might help clear your mind." Zira didn't respond immediately, but after a moment she sighed and let out a long breath. "All right," she said. "A walk. I suppose it couldn't hurt." The two of them left the apartment and descended to the ground floor of the building. Outside, the streets were eerily quiet. Most people had stayed inside, just like Alex and Zira, adhering to the government's lockdown orders. The world felt suspended in time, as if it was holding its breath. They walked along the empty streets, the fresh air feeling good on Alex's skin. He glanced over at Zira, who was walking beside him. Her usually elegant movements were more hurried now, her eyes darting around as if searching for something, but there was a faint glow of relief on her face as she took in the sights. After a few minutes, Zira spoke, her voice softer than before. "I never thought I'd experience this. Being stuck here, on a planet where I don't fully belong and not being able to leave, it's hard." Alex looked at her, surprised by the vulnerability in her voice. "I get it. I never thought I'd be living with an alien during a lockdown either." He laughed lightly, trying to ease the tension. "But hey, we're doing okay, right?" Zira smiled, but it was a sad, tired smile. "I suppose so. You've been incredibly patient with me, Alex. I'm not sure what I would have done without your help. I didn't expect you to be so understanding." Alex felt a warmth spread through him at her words. "You're not so bad yourself. I mean, you're an alien and all, but I think we've got a pretty good system going here." Zira chuckled softly, but there was still a shadow in her eyes. "I can't help but feel like I'm taking advantage of your kindness. You've been so understanding, but you're human. You're not supposed to have to deal with these things." Alex thought about it for a moment. "Look, you didn't ask for any of this. I didn't either. But we're stuck in this together. And I don't know, maybe we're both learning from each other. I think that's what matters." Zira was silent for a long time, but Alex could see the tiniest flicker of something in her eyes. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was something else entirely. He wasn't sure, but he knew that their bond was growing, slowly but surely. As they continued their walk, Alex noticed that Zira seemed a little calmer. Her steps were more measured and her breathing had steadied. Maybe the fresh air really was helping. They walked in silence for a while, both of them lost in their thoughts. Eventually, they reached a small park. It was almost entirely deserted, except for a few birds flying overhead. Zira stood still for a moment, gazing out over the open space, her eyes reflecting the peacefulness of the scene. Alex stood beside her, unsure of what to say but willing to just be present. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was simply trying to be there for her. "I've never really appreciated the small things before," Zira said quietly, her voice distant. "On Voltar 9, we're taught to focus on the bigger picture, on knowledge and progress. But here I find myself noticing little details. The way the light hits the trees. The sound of the wind in the grass. It's different." Alex smiled, appreciating her words. "Yeah, it's easy to miss all of that, isn't it? We get so caught up in our routines we forget to look around. But I guess you're right. Maybe it's the small things that make life worth living." Zira turned to him, her expression more thoughtful than before. "Maybe," she said softly, "maybe it's the small things that can help me get through this. For the first time since they'd met, Alex saw her truly relax. The harshness in her features softened, and her glowing patterns dimmed to a gentle shimmer. It was a sign that, despite the struggle, Zira was starting to find some peace. They stood there for a while longer, letting the quiet of the park settle around them. Alex didn't speak. There was no need. Sometimes just being with someone in silence was enough. As the evening began to fall, they made their way back to the apartment. The tension between them eased, even if just for a moment. Zira seemed more composed than she had in days, and Alex couldn't help but feel a sense of pride for having helped her get there. But there was something else, something growing between them. A bond forged not just by necessity, but by trust and understanding. It wasn't just about surviving the lockdown anymore. It was about facing something bigger together. And as the door to the apartment closed behind them, Alex realized that no matter what the next days brought, they would face it side by side. The days following their walk in the park felt different. The air in the apartment was lighter, the tension between Alex and Zira less obvious. It wasn't that the heat cycle had ended. Zira was still struggling with her emotions and instincts, but there was a sense of calm that had settled over them both. They had crossed an unspoken threshold, one where understanding had begun to take the place of awkwardness, and perhaps even something more. As the lockdown stretched on, Zira's heat cycle began to subside. Her bioluminescent patterns, which had once flickered wildly, were now more controlled, glowing softly in the dim light of their apartment. Her movements were no longer jerky or rushed, and her eyes, once bright with the intensity of her struggle, had softened. The worst of it seemed to be behind them, but even as things started to settle down, Alex could feel a shift in their relationship. It wasn't just about being roommates anymore. The bond they had formed through the shared challenge of the lockdown and Zira's heat cycle had grown stronger, more complicated. One evening, as the city outside their window buzzed with the muted hum of a world slowly returning to normal, Alex found himself reflecting on everything that had happened. He had started this journey just looking for a place to stay, never imagining that living with an alien would change his life in ways he couldn't even predict. Yet here he was, looking at Zira not as a strange, distant alien, but as someone he cared for, a friend at the very least. Zira was standing by the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Her soft glow illuminated her features, making her look almost ethereal. Alex watched her for a moment before walking over to join her. "How are you doing?" he asked quietly. Zira turned to him, a small smile curving her lips. "Better," she said. "It's strange. I feel like I've been on edge for so long that I forgot what it's like to just exist without that pressure. I can finally think clearly again." "I'm glad to hear that," Alex said, feeling a weight lift from his own chest. "It's been tough, but we've made it through, right?" Zira nodded, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, as if she was weighing her next words carefully. "Yes, but there's something I need to tell you, Alex." Alex's heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Zira hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I don't want you to feel like you were just helping me because you had to. I know you didn't sign up for this. You didn't expect to be living with an alien, especially during something as difficult as this." Alex was quiet for a moment, trying to understand where she was coming from. "I don't see it that way," he said, his voice firm. "I didn't help you because I had to. I helped you because I wanted to, and because we were both stuck in this situation together." Zira's expression softened, and she let out a small, relieved sigh. "I'm glad you understand, but I think I owe you something more. I've been fighting my instincts for so long, and I didn't know how to let anyone in. But you were different. You helped me when I needed it most." Alex could feel the sincerity in her words, and for a brief moment, everything else faded away. There was no alien and no human, no heat cycle and no lockdown. There was only the bond they had forged through this strange, unexpected journey. and it was stronger than he had ever expected. Zira stepped closer to him, her voice almost a whisper. "I didn't expect to find someone I could trust in this situation, but I found you, and I'm thankful for that." Alex felt his chest tighten, his mind racing with thoughts he hadn't fully processed before. They had spent so much time focused on getting through the days, surviving the lockdown, managing the heat cycle. But now, as they stood there facing each other in the quiet of their apartment, he realized that what they had built wasn't just about survival, it was about something more, something deeper. "I'm glad I could help," Alex said, his voice softening. "I don't know what this means or where we go from here, but I know one thing: I'm not going anywhere. You've become important to me, Zira. I don't think I could just walk away from that." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The words hung in the air, both heavier and lighter than anything they had said before. Zira's gaze softened, and she reached out, her hand hovering just inches from his. It was a simple gesture, but to Alex, it felt like the beginning of something that neither of them had expected. Finally, Zira spoke, her voice steady and calm. "I don't know where this will lead either, Alex, but I don't think I want to let go of it. I don't want to go back to being alone, not anymore." Alex nodded, his heart beating faster now. "Then we won't. We'll figure it out together, whatever that looks like." And for the first time since the lockdown began, Alex didn't feel the weight of uncertainty hanging over him. There was still a lot they didn't know, about each other, about the future, about the challenges they would face. But as long as they were together, Alex felt like they could handle anything. The next few days passed in a blur of new routines. The lockdown was slowly starting to lift, and Zira's heat cycle had finally ended. The world outside was beginning to reopen, but for Alex and Zira, the world they had created in the quiet of their apartment felt more important than anything else. One morning, Alex found Zira sitting at the kitchen table, her face illuminated by the soft morning light. She was looking at something in her hands, an old artifact from Voltar 9 that she had been studying in her free time. She looked up as Alex entered, her eyes meeting his with a calm understanding. "You're not going back, are you?" Alex asked, his voice careful. Zira smiled, a faint but genuine smile. "No, not yet anyway. I've decided to stay a little longer. There's still so much I want to learn about Earth. And about you." Alex smiled back, a sense of relief flooding through him. "I'd like that." And so the two of them continued their journey, no longer just roommates but something more. They had faced the strange challenges of living together through a lockdown, dealt with biology and instincts neither of them had expected, and learned to trust each other in ways they never thought possible. The future was uncertain, as it always is, but Alex and Zira knew one thing for sure. They would face whatever came next side by side, in a world that was no longer just Earth and Voltar 9, but a shared space between two people who had learned what it meant to truly be together.